Michael closed the car door, but then, as if remembering something, he rolled down the window and waved me over. Against the scorching heat of the summer afternoon, my husband's smile was as gentle and refreshing as a cool stream. He stepped out of the car and adjusted the collar of my blouse. His deep, warm voice was full of concern. "It's a lot for you, being here alone. Once I get Chloe settled into her marine biology program in Hawaii, I'll take care of some company business over there too. It'll probably be about a month. Everything at home, from the meals to Dad's medication. I'm counting on you for everything." Chloe, our 15-year-old daughter, sat in the passenger seat with her headphones on, eyes glued to her phone, not even bothering to look up and say goodbye. She was in that rebellious phase, and spoiled by her father, she'd grown more distant from me lately. I glanced at her, a pang of sadness in my heart, but quickly pushed it away and nodded with a smile to my husband. Michael pointed up to the second floor, to the room where my father-in-law, Arthur, lay. "Oh, and that new aromatherapy diffuser I bought," he added carefully. "The wellness guru said placing it in that corner creates a healing energy vortex, which is great for Dad's health. Remember to keep it running 24/7. Don't turn it off. The vapor will help his breathing too. I've noticed he's been wheezing a bit lately." I nodded. "I remember. You two have a safe flight. Let me know as soon as you land." The car pulled away, leaving me standing alone in the vast, empty driveway. The heavy iron gate swung shut, dividing my world in two. Outside was the boundless freedom of my husband and daughter. Inside was the eerie silence of this enormous suburban house. I turned and went back inside, the sound of my sandals slapping against the polished granite floors feeling strangely out of place. Without the men of the house, it felt immense and unusually cold. The only sounds were the low hum of the central air conditioning and the steady, rhythmic beeping from the vital signs monitor on the second floor. That was where my father-in-law Arthur was. He had been lying there for 8 long years, ever since a massive stroke. Once a formidable executive, a man whose voice commanded respect and instilled fear, he was now just an immobile body, kept alive by machines and the care of his daughter-in-law. I changed into my scrubs, washed my hands thoroughly with antibacterial soap, and entered his room. This was my familiar routine, one I'd performed for nearly 3,000 days. I am a physical therapist. Caring for a patient was not just my duty as a daughter-in-law, it was a professional instinct ingrained in my very being. The room was thick with the scent of frankincense essential oil emanating from the expensive diffuser Michael had brought home last week. He claimed this particular oil calmed the mind and cleansed negative energy. A thin, white mist curled through the air, hitting my face with a damp, cool sensation. I went to the bedside and looked at my father-in-law's gaunt, ashen face. His eyes were shut, his sockets deep and hollow, his skin stretched taut over his bones. As was my habit, I spoke to him softly. "Dad, Michael and Chloe have left for Hawaii. It's just the two of us now. Let me clear your airways, okay? It'll just take a moment." I skillfully turned on the suction machine and put on a pair of medical gloves. The machine's whirring broke the silence. I gently inserted the catheter into his mouth. Suddenly, I felt an unusual rigidity in his jaw muscles. The monitor beside the bed began to beep more rapidly. His heart rate, normally a steady 75, jumped to 78, then 80. Startled, I looked at the screen, thinking it was a machine error or that the suction had caused an irritation. But in that very second, something happened that made my blood run cold. Arthur, the man who had been in a coma for 8 years, the man whose brain damage doctors had declared irreversible, suddenly opened his eyes. This wasn't the vacant, reflexive opening of the eyes I'd sometimes seen. His cloudy eyes were shot through with red veins, but his gaze was fixed on me with an expression of utter consciousness and profound terror. He looked at me, then frantically darted his eyes toward the diffuser, puffing its white mist in the corner of the room. Guttural, broken sounds escaped his throat, like a rusted pipe trying to force water through years of accumulated decay. I stood frozen, the suction catheter still hovering in midair. Arthur struggled to move his dry, cracked lips. It took a long moment, and what seemed like the last ounce of life force he possessed, for him to rasp out 7 words, distorted but horrifyingly clear. "There's poison in the aromatherapy diffuser." Those 7 words fell into the silent room like 7 tombstones crashing down on my chest. I stumbled backward, bumping into the medicine cart with a loud, jarring clang. A chill shot up my spine, seeping into every pore. The room around me seemed to warp. That diffuser was no longer a wellness accessory. It had morphed into a monster, exhaling the breath of death. I looked into my father-in-law's eyes and saw a desperate, silent plea. A primal fear seized my mind. Without another thought, I dropped the catheter, turned, and bolted from the room like a madwoman. I scrambled down the stairs, nearly tripping and falling, and ran straight for the front door, shoving the heavy oak panel open to escape into the yard. The twilight of early evening was settling, swallowing the large house in shadows. I stood in the driveway, panting, my heart hammering against my ribs as if trying to break free. A cool breeze hit my face, but sweat poured from my forehead. Why was I running? If what he said was true, running away was tantamount to leaving him at the mercy of a killer. And if I fled, what would I tell Michael when he returned? He would undoubtedly accuse me of negligence, of abandoning his elderly, helpless father, leading to his demise. I am a healthcare professional. 15 years in the field had forged in me the strength to face life and death. I could not afford to panic. I took a deep breath, smoothed my disheveled hair, and turned back toward the house. The oak door opened like the maw of a great beast waiting to devour its prey. But this time, my steps were steady. I crept back upstairs and pressed my ear against the door to his room. It was quiet inside, save for the hum of the machines. I pushed the door open. Arthur's eyes were closed again, and the heart rate on the monitor had returned to its normal range, as if the terrifying moment had been a figment of my imagination. But I knew it was real. The first thing I did was march straight to the diffuser. I decisively yanked the plug from the wall. The green LED on the device went dark, and the white mist ceased. I carried the machine into the ensuite bathroom. I started to pour the liquid out, but my professional instincts screamed at me not to destroy the evidence. I quickly grabbed a sterile urine sample cup, always stocked in the family medicine cabinet, and collected the last few drops of liquid from the bottom of the reservoir. I brought the cup to my nose and sniffed. The strong scent of frankincense hit me first. But beneath that fragrant layer, my trained sense of smell detected a very faint, acrid odor, reminiscent of bitter almonds. My hands started to shake violently. Based on my pharmacological knowledge, I had a terrifying guess as to what this could be. It was likely a sophisticated mixture, containing cyanide or perhaps a type of neuromuscular blocking agent. Inhaled as a fine mist over a long period, it would gradually weaken the respiratory muscles, causing the lungs to collapse, leading to respiratory failure. For a bedridden patient to die of pneumonia or respiratory failure was tragically common. No one would suspect a thing, not even a medical examiner, without a specific and thorough toxicological screen. It was a perfect murder plan, painless, bloodless, and cloaked in the guise of filial piety and New Age wellness. I tucked the sample cup into the pocket of my scrubs and scanned the room. If Michael had planned this so meticulously, he wouldn't be flying blind. I remembered my husband's obsessive need for control. He always had to have everything within his line of sight. I started searching in the hidden corners, places with the most comprehensive view. On top of the large armoire, mixed in with some decorative boxes, I saw a tiny black dot reflecting the light. Another was hidden in a gap in the air conditioning vent cover. Cameras. Miniature spy cameras. My skin crawled. So Michael wasn't in Hawaii for Chloe's camp, or at least his mind was still right here, in this room. He was monitoring me, monitoring the slow, methodical death of his own father. His loving words of instruction, his caring gestures before he left, it was all a performance. I knew, in that moment, that I was on his stage. Every move I made was potentially being recorded. I had to act. I had to become the clumsy wife, the dedicated but slightly inept daughter-in-law, to dispel any suspicion that I had discovered his plot. I took a deep breath, composed my features into a frustrated scowl, and carried the diffuser's water reservoir to the bathroom sink, pretending to refill it. "Oh, shoot," I exclaimed, intentionally letting my hand slip. The plastic reservoir clattered onto the tiled floor, Crack! The sound of hard plastic hitting stone echoed in the bathroom. A large fracture appeared, and water spilled everywhere. I scrambled to pick it up, then feigned slipping again, knocking the entire base of the machine into the puddle. Water seeped into the internal circuitry. A sizzling sound was followed by a plume of acrid smoke. "Oh no! It's broken!" I lamented, my face a mask of regret and fear. I muttered just loud enough for the camera's microphone to pick it up. "This thing cost hundreds of dollars. I'm so clumsy. Michael's going to kill me when he gets back." I quickly cleaned up the mess and shoved the broken diffuser into a corner closet. Then, I rummaged through a storage closet and pulled out an old, basic humidifier. It was a cheap model that only produced simple water vapor. I filled it with filtered water and plugged it in. The mist it produced was weak, but to me, it was the freshest air I had ever breathed. I returned to the bed, took my father-in-law's thin hand, and gave his fingers a slight squeeze, a silent signal for him to rest easy. The fear I had felt earlier was gone, replaced by a cold, frighteningly clear-headed resolve. Suddenly, the phone in my scrubs pocket rang, the screen lighting up with the name My Love and the video call icon. I took another deep breath, tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear, and patted my cheeks to bring some color back to my face. Forcing a tired but dutiful expression, I answered the call. Michael's face filled the screen. He was wearing a pair of stylish, gold-rimmed sunglasses, and behind him was a chic white wall with warm yellow light casting a glow. His voice, as always, was calm and concerned. "Honey, how's Dad? Did you turn on the diffuser?" "We just checked in," he continued. Sitting in the VIP lounge at JFK, waiting for our connecting flight to Honolulu. I panned the camera around the room, making sure to show the old humidifier chugging away in the corner, then turned it back to my face, feigning embarrassment. "Mike, I'm so sorry. I was being clumsy." While I was refilling the diffuser, I dropped it and water got into the base. It short-circuited and started smoking. I got scared and pulled out the old one from the closet to use for now. Please don't be mad. Through the screen, I saw Michael's jaw clench for a fraction of a second. The smile on his lips froze, then quickly relaxed. He clicked his tongue, his tone slightly chiding but still maintaining an air of forgiveness. "You're always so careless." "Well, what's broken is broken. The old one will have to do, but make sure you turn it up to the highest setting. Dad's lungs are weak. He needs a lot of humidity." I meekly agreed, then hesitated. "Where's Chloe? Let me see her for a second." "I miss her already." Michael turned the camera. Chloe appeared, bundled up in a thick coat and a scarf wrapped snugly around her neck. She gave a forced smile, her eyes darting nervously to the side, as if she were afraid of someone. She mumbled, "Hi, Mom. It's really cold here. I guess winter in Hawaii is no joke. You take care of yourself at home, okay? Dad said you've been having headaches. Don't worry too much." My heart constricted. But then, my professional eye caught a strange detail. In the reflection of Michael's expensive mirrored sunglasses, I saw a row of palm trees swaying in a gentle breeze and the corner of a sparkling blue swimming pool under a bright, sunny sky. That was not the scenery of an international airport terminal, and it certainly wasn't winter in Hawaii. I squinted, looking more closely at the background behind my daughter. On a low coffee table in the distance was a half-eaten box of cookies, its bright orange packaging unmistakable. The words Tate's Bake Shop, Southampton, were printed on the side. That was a famous local specialty from the Hamptons, something you couldn't buy at any airport, let alone JFK. A chill ran down my spine, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from the agony of betrayal. My husband wasn't flying abroad. He was in the Hamptons, just a few hours' drive away. And worse, he had dragged our innocent daughter into his web of lies. I fought back the sob rising in my throat and forced a pained smile. "Okay, sweetie. You stay warm and listen to your father." Michael quickly cut in. "All right, we're about to board. I have to go. Take good care of Dad. I'll call you later." The screen went black, leaving only my own stunned reflection staring back at me. I let my hand fall, the phone dropping onto the bedspread. The betrayal wasn't just from the man I had built a life with. It had crept in, gnawed at, and corrupted the child I had brought into this world. He had turned her into an accomplice, a hostage to keep me trapped in this charade of filial piety. That night, the house was submerged in silence. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Michael's lies piercing my mind like tiny needles. I knew I couldn't just lie here and wait for the inevitable. I had to find out the truth behind this fake trip to the Hamptons and the real motive for wanting his own father dead. I crept out of my bedroom and down the dark hallway to Michael's home office. This room was a forbidden zone. He always kept it locked and had strictly forbidden me, or the cleaning lady he had recently let go, from ever entering, citing the need to protect confidential company documents. Standing before the heavy wooden door, I took a deep breath, my heart pounding like a thief's in my own home. The lock was a smart lock, requiring a keypad code. I recalled the times I'd seen him open it. He was always careful to shield the keypad, but once I had caught a glimpse of him entering a sequence of numbers very quickly. It wasn't my birthday, nor Chloe's. Michael was a narcissist. He loved himself above all else. I tried the date he was promoted to regional manager, the day he considered the crowning achievement of his life. Beep, beep, beep. The error sound echoed in the silent night, making me jump. Wrong. I wiped my sweaty palms on my pajamas, trying to stay calm. I remembered a small detail. Whenever Michael got drunk, he would boast about the day he landed me, seeing it as a conquest, the date we first met. With trembling fingers, I punched in those fateful numbers. Click. The sound of the deadbolt disengaging was like a gunshot next to my ear. I sighed in relief and pushed the door open. A wave of cold, stale air rushed out. Inside, everything was meticulously organized, sterile, clean, and cold, just like its owner. Pale moonlight streamed through a gap in the blinds, illuminating a glossy mahogany desk and a floor-to-ceiling bookshelf. I didn't dare turn on the lights, using only my phone's flashlight. After my experience finding the cameras in Arthur's room, I began scanning this one. A horrifying realization dawned on me. Michael had installed cameras even in his most private sanctuary. One was hidden behind a snake plant on his desk, another tucked between the spines of books on a high shelf. Why? Why would someone monitor their own office? The only answer was a pathological level of paranoia. He trusted no one, not even himself. Or perhaps he feared someone would sneak in here to uncover the dark secrets he was hiding. I knew I was walking a tightrope. Those electronic eyes could be recording me, but I had prepared for this. I had flipped the main circuit breaker for this floor, citing a common tripped breaker issue in older homes, leaving only the priority power source for Arthur's room active. Without electricity, the cameras were useless, at least for a short while. I approached the desk and started searching. The drawers were locked. I didn't have a key. My eyes fell on the expensive leather executive chair. I remembered once, while cleaning, I saw Michael frequently fidgeting with something underneath it when he was deep in thought. I got on my knees and shone the light under the chair's caster base. Sure enough, in a tiny crevice between the swivel mechanism and the chair leg, a small, shiny metal object was held in place with black electrical tape. Holding my breath, I used my fingernail to peel back the tape. A tiny, cold key fell into my palm. It didn't look like a standard drawer key. It seemed to be for some kind of specialty lock. I stood up and swept the flashlight across the bookshelf. Hundreds of books on economics and business management were lined up perfectly. But my gaze stopped on a thick, leather-bound volume titled The Encyclopedia of Classical Architecture, placed centrally on a prominent shelf. Michael was a pragmatist. He had never shown any interest in architecture until recently, around the same time he brought home that monstrous diffuser. I pulled the book out. It was incredibly heavy, far heavier than a normal book. When I shook it gently, there was no rustle of paper inside, only the solid thud of a dense object. I opened the cover. There were no pages. Instead, there was a cold metal plate with a small keyhole in the center. It was a mini safe, ingeniously disguised as a book. I inserted the key. With a soft click, the safe's lid sprang open. Inside, there was no cash or jewelry, only a neatly clipped stack of documents. My hands trembled as I picked them up and read them under the flashlight beam. The first page made my knees weak. It wasn't a life insurance policy, as I might have guessed. It was a handwritten promissory note. The handwriting was sloppy, but the number was shockingly clear. $2 million. The borrower was listed as Michael Peterson. The lender was a finance company with a fancy name, but I knew it was a front for loan sharks. The interest was calculated daily, and the compounding figure had already reached an astronomical sum. The payment deadline was in 3 days. The next document was a detailed zoning map of a piece of property Arthur had inherited from his parents in his hometown, a piece of land he had always preserved as the family estate. It was now slated for an eminent domain buyout to make way for a new highway. The estimated compensation value was in the tens of millions. And the final document, the one that felt like a vice squeezing my heart, was a pre-drafted will. In it, Arthur, the man lying unconscious in his bed, was declared to be of sound mind and body, bequeathing his entire estate, his sole asset, to his son, Michael Peterson. Arthur's signature at the bottom was shaky and distorted, clearly written by someone guiding his non-dominant hand while he was incapacitated. But there was more. Tucked underneath was a do not resuscitate, DNR order, signed by the legal guardian, me. My signature was forged so perfectly that even I was startled by its authenticity. The horrifying truth hit me. Michael didn't just want to kill his father to inherit his property and pay off his debts. He wanted to make me his accomplice, the person who signed the death warrant for his own father-in-law. He had planned everything, a monstrous scheme that threw both his wife and his father under the bus to save himself from his massive debt. Hot, salty tears streamed down my face. I bit my lip hard to keep from crying out in anguish. Behind the facade of the successful, model husband was a desperate debtor, a monster baring its fangs, ready to devour his closest loved ones. I shakily replaced the papers, feeling as if I were handling death sentences. As I did, my fingers brushed against a hard object at the bottom of the safe. It was a professional-grade digital voice recorder, the compact kind with a large storage capacity that business people often use. I picked it up, my palm slick with cold sweat. Why would Michael hide this so carefully with these life-or-death documents? Perhaps he used it to record important evidence, or maybe it was some kind of insurance policy for his shady dealings. I plugged in my earbuds and pressed play. A burst of static, then voices became clear. "Michael, what's the right dosage? If we hit him too hard and he goes too fast, the cops will get suspicious." A gruff, unfamiliar voice spoke. I didn't recognize it, but from the way he spoke, he was clearly an accomplice with some medical knowledge. Michael's voice replied, cold and precise, each word sending a shiver down my spine. "Just mix it according to the ratio I gave you. High-potency potassium chloride, dissolved in the diffuser solution. Just let it run 24/7. His lungs are already weak. Inhaling this, his respiratory muscles will slowly become paralyzed. It'll look like he died of old age, of natural decline. Even if a doctor examines him, they'll just see collapsed lungs, respiratory failure. Who's going to run a toxicology screen on the air?" "How long will it take?" the other man asked. "I've calculated it. Given his condition, about 72 hours, 3 days. Right when I get back from Hawaii, I'll play the part of the grieving, devoted son. A few dramatic tears and it's over. Just remember, don't leave any trace on the machine. Don't worry, you know how I work. But remember my cut. Relax. As soon as the estate is settled and the property is in my name, I'll wire you $200,000, not a penny less." The recording ended with Michael's chilling chuckle. I tore the earbuds out, my body shaking as if I had a fever. 3 days, 72 hours. That was the deadline Michael had set for his father's life, and the countdown had already begun. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was past midnight. There wasn't much time. I quickly took out my phone, switched it to video mode, and recorded the entire process of me opening the safe, showing each document, the loan agreement, the forged will, and the voice recorder playing that damning conversation. Then, I plugged the recorder into an OTG adapter and copied the entire audio file onto a tiny USB drive that I always kept on my keychain. When I was done, I carefully wiped my fingerprints from the papers, the recorder, and the lockbox, and arranged everything exactly as I had found it. I placed the key back under the chair, securing it with the black tape. I backed out of the room, scanning it one last time to ensure there was no trace of my intrusion. Back in my bedroom, I collapsed onto the bed but couldn't sleep. My mind was filled with the ticking of an invisible clock. Every second that passed brought my father-in-law closer to death. But I couldn't act rashly. If I called the police now, Michael would deny everything, blame someone else, and with the power of his creditors and his own cunning, I might not win. I needed to catch him in the act, to have him commit his crime in front of witnesses. Clutching the small USB drive that held Michael's terrible secret, I returned to Arthur's room, my heart heavy. The night stretched on endlessly. Every small sound in the large house made me jump. I lay on the cot next to Arthur's bed, staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds in a state of high alert. Michael's plan was meticulous. He had even hired someone with medical expertise. This showed just how determined he was. The next morning, as the first weak rays of sunlight filtered through the blinds, the doorbell rang. The sharp, insistent chimes felt like a bad omen. I checked the clock. It was just after 7 a.m. Who would be here at this hour? I threw on a light robe, tidied my hair, and went to answer the door. Standing on the porch was a middle-aged man, stocky, with gold-rimmed glasses and a black leather briefcase. He had an educated air about him, but his eyes were shifty and wouldn't meet mine. He offered a wide smile and extended his hand. "Good morning, Mrs. Peterson. I'm Dr. Evans, Michael's private physician. He asked me to stop by this morning to check on Mr. Peterson's health and see how that new diffuser is working, whether the therapeutic mist needs adjustment." A chill went through me. Dr. Evans. I had never heard Michael mention that name, but from his confident demeanor, I knew instantly this was the accomplice from the recording. He wasn't here to check on Arthur's health. He was here to see if the poison was working and why the expensive diffuser had been replaced. I forced a calm expression and shook his hand. "Oh, Dr. Evans, Michael is so thoughtful, worrying about his father even when he's away. Please, come in." As I led him upstairs, my mind raced. If I let him examine Arthur now, he would discover that his vital signs were stable, even better than usual, since I had stopped the poison and been providing intensive care. He would report back to Michael, and their plan would change, perhaps becoming more brutal, more direct. I had to do something, now. "Doctor, if you'll just wait one moment, let me tidy up the room a bit. It smells so strongly of medicine." Using that excuse, I hurried into Arthur's room first. I rushed to the medicine cabinet and grabbed a packet of a herbal sleep aid I sometimes used. It was a gentle naturopathic remedy, mostly valerian root and chamomile, completely harmless but effective at inducing a light, natural-looking sleep. I quickly mixed a potent dose into a cup of warm water and helped Arthur sit up, whispering in his ear, "Dad, drink this for me, then pretend to be in a very deep sleep. A bad man is here. We have to put on a show to trick him." Arthur seemed to understand, gulping down the mixture. Within minutes, his eyes grew heavy and his breathing became deep, slow, and even. He looked exactly like someone in a deep coma, his life force fading. I wiped his mouth, hid the cup, and then opened the door to let Dr. Evans in. Evans entered, his eyes darting around the room like a hawk's. He stared at the old, cheap humidifier chugging away in the corner, his brow furrowed. "Why are you using this thing? Where's the new machine Michael bought?" I lowered my head, looking ashamed. "I'm so sorry. I was clumsy and broke it yesterday. I was going to call a repairman, but I haven't gotten around to it. This old one is a bit weak. I'm worried Dad isn't getting enough humidity." Evans grunted non-committally. He approached the bed, pulled out his stethoscope, and placed it on Arthur's chest. He listened for a long time, then lifted Arthur's eyelids to shine a penlight and checked his reflexes. I stood beside him, my heart pounding, terrified he would find something amiss. But the herbal sedative had worked its magic. Arthur lay completely still, his body limp, his pupillary response sluggish. Evans nodded to himself, a smug, self-satisfied smirk playing on his lips. He turned to me, his tone grave. "I'm afraid his condition seems to have weakened considerably. His lungs are congested, and his heart rate is slow." At this rate, he let the sentence hang, but his eyes gleamed with triumph. He believed the plan was proceeding perfectly, that Arthur was dying on schedule. I pretended to sniffle, dabbing at my eyes. "Oh no, I'm so worried, doctor. With Michael away, if anything happens to his father, I don't know how I'll face him. Evans patted my shoulder consolingly, but his hand felt as cold as a snake. Don't you worry. For the elderly, after a long illness, it's the natural course of things. You just continue to provide the best care you can. He packed up his things, but before leaving, he pulled a small, unlabeled, dark glass bottle from his briefcase. Michael also asked me to bring this over. It's a high-potency, multivitamin supplement imported from Germany. It's very good. Make sure you administer 5 drops through his feeding tube every evening. It will help boost his immune system. I took the bottle, the cold glass chilling my skin. The bottle was smooth, without a single word of instruction. The cap was crudely sealed with a thin plastic wrap. A high-potency vitamin? I'd been in the medical field for 15 years and had never seen any legitimate supplement, especially an imported one, without a label, an FDA seal, or instructions. I nodded, my voice trembling with faux gratitude. Thank you so much, doctor. This is wonderful. I'll give it to him tonight. Evans looked pleased. He offered a few more empty platitudes and left. I saw him to the door, watching until his black sedan disappeared around the corner before daring to go back inside. The moment the door closed, the grateful smile vanished from my face, replaced by a wave of revulsion and fury. I ran with the bottle to my makeshift lab, a small corner in the storage room where I kept a microscope and some basic testing equipment for my continuing education. I extracted a small amount of the liquid onto a slide and added a reagent. The result was what I had feared. The solution turned a dark violet when it met the specific chemical indicator. This wasn't a vitamin, it was a derivative of digitalis, a powerful cardiac medication. But if overdosed, or given to someone with a slow heart rate like Arthur, it would cause a severe arrhythmia, leading to ventricular fibrillation and cardiac arrest. A single stone to kill 2 birds. If Arthur died of a sudden heart attack, it would be attributed to old age and a failing heart. More importantly, if an autopsy were performed, they would find a high concentration of digitalis in his blood. And who was the person directly administering the medicine? Me. The unlabeled bottle would disappear, or Evans would swear he gave me vitamins and that I had either made a mistake or intentionally swapped the medication to harm my father-in-law. Michael, oh Michael, how could you be so cruel? You want me to take the fall for everything so you can righteously inherit the money and clear your debts. You value 16 years of marriage less than a stack of IOUs. Shaking, I poured most of the liquid down the toilet, flushing it away. But I kept a small amount, sealed it in a test tube, and hid it in the back of the freezer, disguised inside a bag of frozen peas. This would be my second piece of evidence, after the audio recording. Then I refilled the bottle with a similarly colored sugar water solution. I knew Michael was still watching me through the cameras. I had to let him see me obediently following his orders. That evening, under the dim yellow light of the bedroom, I carefully administered 5 drops of the medicine in reality, sugar water into Arthur's feeding tube. I did it slowly, meticulously, so the camera could clearly capture every action. As I did, I murmured, "Here's your special medicine to make you strong, Dad. Michael loves you so much. He had this sent all the way from overseas." I glanced up at the tiny red light on top of the armoire, thinking to myself, "Watch closely, Michael. Your wife is taking excellent care of your father." But I knew defense wasn't enough. I needed my father-in-law to regain consciousness, or at least enough movement in his hand to sign or thumbprint a new will, invalidating Michael's scheme. With only 2 days left, I had to make a big gamble. After giving him the medicine, I began my audacious plan. I knew the exact placement of every camera in the room. The main one on the armoire covered most of the bed, but it had a fatal flaw, a fixed angle. I dragged out the standing frame from the corner of the room, a bulky piece of equipment used for spinal cord injury patients that I had bought long ago but rarely used because Arthur was too weak. I painstakingly maneuvered it to block the main camera's line of sight, creating a perfect shield for the upper half of Arthur's body. To anyone watching, like Michael, it would just look like I was rearranging furniture or preparing for a passive standing session, a normal part of physical therapy. But in that precious blind spot, I began a real battle. I didn't put him in the frame. I used an advanced PNF technique, proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, a method to reawaken dormant nerves. I took Arthur's frail hand and pressed my thumb hard into the sensitive pressure point between his thumb and forefinger. It was an extremely sensitive spot that sent a sharp, shooting pain up the arm. "It hurts, doesn't it, Dad? Please, bear with me," I whispered, tears welling in my eyes, but my hand didn't lessen the pressure. "I need you to wake up. I need you to be able to move this finger." Arthur's face contorted in pain, sweat breaking out on his brow. The intense pain was a jolt to his brain, forcing his aging neurons to fire again. He couldn't scream. His vocal cords were too weak, but he managed a low moan from deep in his throat. I continued, applying pressure to points on his wrist and elbow while performing joint rotations and muscle stretches more forcefully than usual. It was the only way to break through the muscle spasticity and re-establish neural pathways in such a short time. I knew I was hurting him, torturing him, but I had no other choice. Mercy, at this moment, was a cruelty to his very life. "Come on, Dad. You have to live to expose that ungrateful son. You have to live to protect me and Chloe." I encouraged him as I worked, my voice cracking with emotion. After more than an hour of struggle, both of us were drenched in sweat. I sank to the floor, exhausted, my hand shaking too much to hold a water bottle, but my efforts were rewarded. When I gently tickled the palm of his hand, Arthur's index finger twitched. It was a tiny, involuntary reflex, but to me, it was more precious than gold. It was a sign of life, a flicker of hope. His nerves weren't dead, they were just imprisoned, needing a powerful shock to break the chains. I wiped the sweat from his brow, adjusted him into the most comfortable position, and then moved the standing frame back to its original spot. To the camera, I was just a tired daughter-in-law after a strenuous therapy session. But I knew Michael would get suspicious if I spent too much time in that blind spot without any visible change. I needed another act, a diversion to throw him off. A performance that would convince him I was on the verge of a mental breakdown and completely harmless. That night, I began my performance, around 2 a.m. When vigilance is at its lowest but the darkness is at its deepest, I let my hair down in a messy tangle and wore a loose, white nightgown. Barefoot, I walked out of my bedroom and down the long, dark hallway. My eyes were wide, staring blankly into the space ahead, my lips moving, muttering nonsensical phrases. I moved like a ghost, a lost soul wandering my own home. I went downstairs to the kitchen, stood in front of the refrigerator for a long time, opening and closing it without taking anything. The pale light from inside illuminated my wan face, creating a chilling scene. Then I went back upstairs, toward the small alcove where we kept photos, and stood muttering before a picture of my late mother-in-law. My phone, left in the bedroom, began to vibrate insistently. I knew the camera's motion detection system had sent an alert to Michael's phone. He was watching, and he must have been utterly bewildered by my bizarre behavior. The phone stopped, then rang again, a third time. Only then did I slowly walk back to my room and answer, my voice groggy and confused. "Hello? Who is it? What the hell are you doing? Wandering around the house like a ghost in the middle of the night?" Michael's sharp voice came through the phone, tinged with a hint of fear. I feigned utter surprise. "What? What are you talking about? I was sleeping. I haven't gone anywhere. Don't lie to me. I just saw you on the camera, walking down to the kitchen and then to the family photos. What's wrong with you?" I was silent for a moment, then burst into sobs. "I don't know. I've been having terrible nightmares lately. I dreamt Mom came back. She said there's a presence in the house. She said she was cold. I think I was sleepwalking, Mike. I'm so scared." There was silence on the other end. I could picture his face annoyed, contemptuous, but also relieved. He would believe that I was under extreme stress, that my nerves were shot, leading to sleepwalking and paranoid delusions. A weak, superstitious woman on the brink of madness was no threat to his grand plan. All right, he said, his voice softening, though still laced with impatience. "It's probably just exhaustion from taking care of Dad. Take one of those sleeping pills I left for you and get some rest. And stop wandering around and scaring me." "Okay, I will," I sniffled. "Mike, when are you coming home? I'm scared to be here alone. I'm almost done with work. I'll be back in 2 days. Just stay put and don't do anything stupid." He hung up. I wiped my tears, a cold smile touching my lips. Michael had taken the bait. He believed I was a helpless lamb waiting for him to return and save me. This underestimation was his greatest weakness. He didn't know that this lamb was sharpening her claws in the dark, waiting for the right moment to tear the mask off the wolf. But this sleepwalking act wasn't just to deceive Michael. During my aimless wandering, I had carefully observed the house's locks, emergency exits, and the location of the main electrical panel. I was preparing for the worst-case scenario, a direct confrontation when he returned. And more importantly, my supposed insanity would be the perfect cover for my next, more audacious moves. If I did anything unusual, Michael would simply attribute it to my strange new condition. After the night of my dramatic sleepwalking episode, I returned to the daily rhythm of a devoted daughter-in-law, but my mindset had completely changed. I was no longer a passive caregiver but a hunter, patiently concealed within a docile exterior. That morning, pale sunlight streamed through the window, falling on Arthur's gaunt face. It was the scheduled day to change his bed linens, an arduous task that required all my skills in patient handling. I prepared a basin of warm water with ginger-infused rubbing alcohol to give him a bed bath, the sharp, clean scent of ginger cutting through the stale air of sickness. As I worked, I chattered aimlessly to him, my eyes always aware of the camera on the armoire. "It's a beautiful day, Dad. Let me put some fresh sheets on for you. These are the silk ones Michael bought. They're so cool and comfortable." I supported his shoulders to turn him onto his side, propping him with pillows. As I was removing the old fitted sheet from the head of the bed, I noticed Arthur's gaze. It wasn't the usual vacant or pained look. It was focused, urgent. His eyes darted repeatedly to the top left corner of the thick memory foam mattress, where it met the wooden headboard. I paused, pretending to adjust his pillow, and leaned in close to whisper, "Are you trying to tell me something, Dad? Is there something under there?" He blinked twice, hard. My heart hammered against my ribs. Using my body to block the camera's view, I feigned smoothing the mattress with my left hand while my right hand slipped underneath the heavy foam. My fingers found a clean, sharp slit in the side of the mattress cover. It was old. The edges of the foam were slightly yellowed. If you weren't looking for it, you'd think it was just a tear from moving. I pushed my fingers deeper into the slit and felt something hard and cold. It wasn't a spring or part of the bed frame. Holding my breath, I pinched the object and pulled it out. Resting in my palm was an old black Nokia brick phone, the indestructible kind that was popular over a decade ago. I stared at it, stunned, then looked back at Arthur. It seemed he hadn't been a passive victim after all. When had he hidden this here? It must have been before the stroke that left him paralyzed 8 years ago. He must have suspected something, known that something terrible was about to happen, and prepared this as a lifeline. But the illness, or perhaps the first dose of poison, had struck too quickly, incapacitating him before he could make his call for help, trapping him and this secret in a silent, living tomb for nearly a decade. I quickly slipped the phone into the deep pocket of my scrubs and continued changing the sheets as if nothing had happened. There, all fresh and clean. "You'll sleep well now, Dad," I said cheerfully. But inside, a storm was raging. The phone in my pocket felt like a burning coal, urging me to uncover the secret it held. It was the only silent witness to what happened 8 years ago, the key to unlocking the truth Michael had worked so hard to bury. I hid in the bathroom and locked the door. I tried pressing the power button, but it was useless. The battery had died long ago. Fortunately, our house was full of old electronics. After rummaging through a junk drawer, I found a compatible pin charger. I plugged it in and waited anxiously. 5 minutes felt like an eternity. Finally, the screen lit up with the classic Nokia logo of 2 hands joining, followed by the iconic startup jingle. I quickly muffled the speaker, terrified the sound would carry. The phone wasn't password protected. I went straight to the messages. The inbox was empty, as was the sent folder. He must have deleted them to avoid detection. I switched to the drafts folder, hoping for a clue. I was not disappointed. There was a single, unsent message, dated the 15th of May 2016, the very day Arthur was rushed to the hospital for his stroke. The message was short, riddled with typos from an elderly person typing in a hurry, but its content sent a chill down my spine. Keep poisoing me. Help me, Frank. He WNT's the land. I covered my mouth to stifle a sob. Frank. The name jogged my memory. Frank was my father-in-law's oldest and closest army buddy. He was a respected retired veteran, a man of integrity and principle. He used to visit often to play chess with Arthur, but ever since Arthur got sick, Michael had always used the excuse that he needed absolute quiet, turning visitors away. Eventually, Frank stopped coming by, likely thinking his friend was too ill to be disturbed. So, 8 years ago, my father-in-law had already seen the true face of his beloved son. The bird's nest soup, the nutritional shakes Michael had so lovingly prepared for him back then, were actually laced with poison. He had tried to call for help, but the poison's paralyzing effect had moved faster than his aging fingers, leaving this message forever unsent. Tears streamed down my face as I stared at the screen. He had lain there, suffering the ravages of illness and the profound psychological torment of knowing his own son had tried to kill him, while watching me, his daughter-in-law, unwittingly aid his tormentor by caring for his broken body, freeing Michael to cheat on me and run his scams. I wiped my tears and saved Frank's number to my own phone. This was my trump card. My words might not carry enough weight, but a cry for help from an old comrade, a victim on the brink of death, would surely ignite the soldier's honor in Frank. He would be the one to help me turn the tables, legally and socially. I returned to the room and took my father-in-law's hand, whispering with resolve, "Dad, I read it. Frank will know what happened. I promise, this time, I'll send that message for you. We are not alone in this." Arthur looked at me, a single, cloudy tear escaping the corner of his eye and tracing a path down his hollow cheek. It was a tear of relief after 8 years of silent suffering. That afternoon, I decided to call my daughter again. The suspicion that Michael was manipulating Chloe gnawed at me. I needed to know how deep his psychological poison had seeped into her mind. The video call connected. Chloe was sitting on a hotel bed, sipping a frappuccino, looking more cheerful than yesterday. But when she saw me, her smile vanished, replaced by a guarded, pitying expression. "Mom, did you take your medication?" That was the first thing she asked. Not, "How are you?" but "Did you take your medication?" I forced a smile, my heart twisting. "I'm not sick, honey. Why would I need medication? I feel fine." Chloe sighed, her tone unnervingly mature, echoing the condescending way Michael often spoke to me. "You always say that. Dad says you've been really forgetful lately, and you've been imagining things. He says the stress of taking care of Grandpa for so long has made you anxious and paranoid. You have to take the nerve supplements Dad bought for you, or you won't get better." I was speechless. So that was it. Michael had painted the perfect picture for our daughter. Mom was a weak, mentally unstable woman prone to delusions. Therefore, anything I said, any suspicion I voiced about him, would be dismissed as a symptom of my illness. He had brainwashed our child into believing that Dad was the hero, shouldering the family's burdens while tolerating a sick wife. It was the most cruel and insidious form of gaslighting I could imagine. I swallowed my pain and asked gently, "Chloe, is your father there? I need to talk to him." "Dad's in a meeting with a client, Mom. He's so busy, trying to manage his work, worry about Grandpa, and take care of you. Try not to bother him too much, okay? Let him focus on earning money." Every word from my daughter was a knife in my heart. She was protecting him and, in doing so, pushing me away. I looked into her eyes and saw the growing chasm between us. If I blurted out the truth now, "Your father is a murderer. Your father is lying to you," she wouldn't believe me. She would think I was having a major psychotic episode. I choked back my tears and nodded. "Okay, sweetie, I understand. I won't bother him. You have fun." After hanging up, I sank to the floor, overwhelmed by a sense of powerlessness. I could endure losing my husband, but losing my child, being seen as mentally ill by the daughter I gave birth to, that was a pain beyond words. Michael didn't just want to kill his father and steal his money. He wanted to completely isolate me, to strip away my last remaining emotional support. But that very pain ignited a fire of rage within me. I would not let him win. I had to save my daughter from his web of lies before he completely twisted her character. I stood up and dried my tears. This was not the time for crying. I needed more concrete proof of the client Michael was meeting. I recalled the reflection in his sunglasses and the box of cookies from the Hamptons. I couldn't drive there and confront them, but the digital age allowed me to be a detective from home. I opened my old laptop and logged into a dummy Facebook account I'd created years ago to browse sales groups. No friends, no personal information. I typed the name of the most famous five-star resort in the Hamptons into the search bar, the one whose sailboat logo I'd glimpsed in Michael's sunglasses. I went to the resort's official page and scrolled through the check-ins and recent posts tagged at that location. Hundreds of photos appeared: tourists, couples, families. I patiently scrolled through them, my eyes straining to find a familiar face. 30 minutes, then an hour passed. My eyes began to ache. Suddenly my hand froze. A photo posted 4 hours ago by an account named Jessica A. The picture showed a young, glamorous woman in a skimpy bikini lounging by the pool, holding a cocktail. But what made my blood boil wasn't her provocative pose. It was the blurry reflection of the person taking the photo in the glass door behind her. A stocky figure with slicked-back hair, leaning down to get the shot. It was unmistakably Michael, and in the far corner of the photo, a young girl was playing in the water. The familiar figure was, heartbreakingly, Chloe. I clicked on Jessica's profile. The post was public. The caption read, "A perfect little family getaway. Thanks to my amazing boss for spoiling us." I scrolled down to the comments. Her friends were gushing. "You guys are the cutest family. Living the dream, Jess. Lucky you, great husband and sweet kid." She had liked every single comment. I recognized her. Jessica Adams, the head accountant at Michael's company, the one he always praised as being efficient and resourceful. Apparently, her resourcefulness extended beyond the ledger books to his bed and his entire family. Looking at the photo, I didn't feel jealousy. That luxurious emotion had died long ago. I only felt a cold, profound disgust. This picture was irrefutable proof that Michael had a second family waiting in the wings. Chloe was oblivious. Michael had probably introduced Jessica as a colleague or a business associate. But Jessica knew exactly what she was doing. She was publicly staking her claim, rehearsing for her future role as the mistress of our home. The moment Arthur and I were gone, I took screenshots of everything and saved them to a hidden folder. My hand gripped the mouse so tightly my knuckles turned white. They were enjoying their paradise, built on the suffering and lives of others. Fine, I thought. Go ahead and laugh, because when I bring this curtain down, what awaits you won't be paradise. It will be hell on earth. I closed the laptop and looked over at my father-in-law, lying motionless. My eyes were no longer weak. They were as sharp as a scalpel. "Dad," I whispered, "they're celebrating too soon. It's time we taught them a lesson about karma." Knowing the true nature of the man I once called my husband, I understood that mere words in court would mean nothing without cold, hard physical evidence. Michael was cunning. He would deny everything and twist the narrative to blame me, the person directly caring for his father. I had to move faster, be one step ahead, and turn my professional knowledge into a shield for us both. In the room thick with the fake scent of healing oils, I began collecting evidence with the meticulousness of a forensic scientist. From the medicine cabinet, I took several small Ziploc bags and a fresh pair of medical gloves. I gently snipped a small lock of hair from the nape of my father-in-law's neck, the most inconspicuous spot. The dry, white strands lay in my palm like sharp wires. Science has shown that heavy metals and neurotoxins accumulate in hair follicles over long periods. This hair would serve as a biological diary, recording the entire process of his slow poisoning over the past 8 years, something Michael and his quack doctor would never have anticipated. I sealed the bag, labeled it with the date and time, and hid it deep inside the stuffing of an old teddy bear on top of the armoire. Next, I collected a urine sample from his catheter bag. I took the first sample of the day, divided it among several glass test tubes, and wrapped them in aluminum foil to prevent light from degrading any chemical compounds. I took these samples to the kitchen and hid them deep in the freezer, disguised inside a half-empty bag of frozen peas. Who would ever suspect that amidst ordinary food items lay evidence of a heinous crime? After securing the evidence from Arthur, I dealt with my own situation. The nerve supplements Michael had insisted I take every day were, in reality, meant to dull my senses and cloud my judgment. I went to my room, flushed the little blue capsules down the toilet, and replaced them with B-complex vitamins of a similar size and shape that I had secretly bought at the pharmacy. That evening, I sat at my vanity, where the bedroom camera had a clear view. I poured a glass of water, took out 2 of the vitamin pills, and swallowed them dramatically. I played the part of the obedient, trusting wife perfectly. After taking them, I sat staring into the mirror for a moment, then slowly let my head drop onto the vanity, pretending the drug was taking effect, my eyelids heavy. I mumbled a few nonsensical words, my limbs going slack, creating the image of a woman losing control of her body and mind. Through my slitted eyes, I saw the camera's indicator light blinking rapidly. Somewhere in the Hamptons, Michael was likely smirking, satisfied to see his prey falling deeper into his trap. The second day passed in a state of extreme tension. I knew Michael was as paranoid as they come. He wouldn't take his eyes off the surveillance feed for long. To prepare for my next moves, I needed to create blind spots in the house's security system without arousing his suspicion. If I cut the power, he would immediately send someone to check. I needed a technical glitch that looked natural. I went to the kitchen, tore off a piece of aluminum foil, and crumpled it lightly. I went to the main Wi-Fi router in the living room, the heart of the wireless camera system. I carefully wrapped the foil around one of the antennas, adjusting it so the signal wasn't completely blocked but became weak and intermittent. The effect was immediate. The internet light on the router began to flash erratically. I checked my phone. The camera feeds were now choppy and pixelated. The connection would drop, then return, with the buffering icon spinning endlessly. This was exactly what I needed. These moments of lost connection, a few seconds here, a minute there, would be my curtain. To make the glitch seem legitimate, I sent Michael a text, affecting the frustrated tone of a tech-illiterate housewife. "Mike, this internet is terrible. I can't even stream a movie, and the video calls to Chloe keep dropping. It must be the bad weather." He replied quickly, his tone annoyed but not suspicious. "It's probably the provider. I'll call them later. Just leave it alone. Don't touch anything and make it worse." With his implicit permission, I began to act more boldly during the network lags. When the camera feeds froze, I quickly moved essential items, preparing a go bag with emergency supplies and hiding the documents in a more secure location. I also used the intermittent connection to whisper key instructions to my father-in-law without fear of being fully recorded, teaching him breathing techniques and how to signal with his eyes. In that tightly monitored space, we had built our own secret communication channel right under the enemy's nose. The feeling of being a spy in my own home was both infuriating and heartbreaking. This house, once our sanctuary, had become a high-tech prison, but within its confines, a woman's survival instinct had awakened, stronger than ever. I would break the bars of this prison, starting with these harmless, flickering signals. Time was running out. I needed to lure the snake out of its hole sooner than planned. If I passively waited for the 72-hour deadline, Arthur might not survive. His health was genuinely fragile. I needed Michael and his cronies to panic, to make a mistake, to show their hands. I took out Arthur's old Nokia phone and inserted a prepaid SIM card I'd bought from a corner store that morning. The stiff rubber keys hurt my fingers, but each character that appeared on the monochrome screen carried the force of a bomb. I didn't text Michael. He was too cunning. I chose softer targets, Dr. Evans and the main office number at Michael's company, where his mistress Jessica controlled the books. The first message to Evans: anonymous tip. Arthur Peterson's 8-year-old stroke case is being reopened by police. They're looking into his prescriptions. You'd better cover your tracks. The second, to Michael's office. The books are being audited for tax evasion and illegal loans. Investigators are coming. Be careful. I didn't sign my name or explain further, just dropped these vague, targeted bombshells. People with secrets are easily spooked. The slightest unexpected noise can make them lose sleep. After sending the texts, I snapped the SIM card in half and flushed it. The Nokia was hidden back in its place. The effect was faster than I'd imagined. About an hour later, the landline in the living room rang incessantly, but I had already unplugged it. Peeking through the blinds, I saw Evans's car screech to a halt in front of the gate, then speed away just as quickly. He looked distraught. He didn't dare come inside, likely fearing he was being watched. He was probably frantically trying to contact Michael. I knew my anonymous texts had thrown a boulder into their placid pond of evil. They would be paranoid, suspicious of each other. Michael would suspect a corporate rival or an insider. Evans would fear being thrown under the bus by Michael. The demonic pact between them was starting to crack. Most importantly, they would be forced to accelerate their plan. Instead of waiting for my father-in-law to fade away over 3 days, they would want him gone immediately to eliminate the source of the investigation and secure the assets. The danger was closer, but so was my only chance to catch them red-handed. I sat by Arthur's bed, gripping his hand. "It's almost time, Dad," I whispered. "The storm is coming." The air in the house grew thick and suffocating, like the sky before a thunderstorm. That afternoon, as I was in the kitchen preparing a thin broth, the lights flickered once, then came back on. A long beep sounded from the Wi-Fi router, followed by the dead silence of all smart devices. I ran to check. All the indicator lights on the router were off, except for a single, solid red power light. The power wasn't out, and it wasn't my aluminum foil trick. This was a forced remote reset, or someone had physically cut the line from outside. The internet was completely dead. The cameras were offline. My heart pounded. Michael had made his move. He cut the internet not because it was faulty, but to erase any digital footprint of what was about to happen. He wanted to create a complete blackout to commit his final crime without leaving any record. I rushed to the second-floor window, hiding behind the curtain to look out at the street. The sky was darkening quickly, storm clouds gathering. Under the newly lit yellow glow of a streetlight, I saw a familiar black SUV parked inconspicuously at the intersection about 50 yards away. Its headlights were off, but the engine was idling, a thin wisp of exhaust curling from the tailpipe. Even from a distance, I recognized the license plate. It was Michael's car. He was back. Not in Hawaii, not in the Hamptons, but right outside his own home, stalking it like a predator. He didn't come in right away. He was likely waiting for full darkness or for Dr. Evans to arrive. The car's presence was the clearest signal. The performance of the devoted son was over. The stage was set for a brutal finale. I turned to look at my father-in-law. He was looking at me, his eyes surprisingly steady. He knew the moment of truth had arrived. I took a deep, shaky breath, forcing my trembling hands to still. This was no time for fear. I ran to the medicine cabinet and pulled out the emergency kit I had prepared. One syringe filled with epinephrine real heart medication, and another filled with saline but labeled with a fake poison label I had made. I hid them in my pocket and began to stage the room. I messed up the bedsheets, knocked over a glass of water, and scattered a few pieces of gauze I had stained with fake blood. I wanted to create the scene of a failed medical emergency, the chaos of a family member trying desperately to save a loved one. "Dad," I said, my voice choked with emotion, "we have to begin." I went to the monitor and adjusted the EKG leads on his chest to make the machine report false readings, triggering a fake alarm. The rapid beep, beep, beep filled the room, a trumpet call for the final battle. I grasped his frail hand tightly, my voice catching in my throat. "Dad, I'm so sorry. For this next part, I have to cause you a little discomfort. Please, trust me, it will all be over soon." Arthur couldn't speak, but he blinked slowly, his trembling index finger hooking around my pinky, a silent pact, a gesture of absolute trust. He understood. This was the final gamble for both of us against the fangs of his monstrous son. I began. First, I clamped the IV line that delivered his nutritional fluid. For a long-term bedridden patient, cutting off hydration, even for a few hours, would cause a rapid physical response. His skin would become dry, his lips chapped, and his vital signs would fluctuate wildly. I knew I was walking a fine line, needing to time it perfectly to avoid causing permanent kidney damage. Next, I turned to the heart monitor, the most crucial prop for deceiving Michael. I removed the electrode pads from Arthur's chest, smeared on a thick layer of conductive gel, but then deliberately reapplied them in slightly the wrong positions. This would create signal interference, causing the EKG waveform on the screen to become chaotic, spiking and dropping erratically, even displaying artifact patterns that looked identical to ventricular fibrillation or severe arrhythmia. I adjusted the machine's alarm settings, lowering the blood pressure threshold and raising the heart rate limit. The slightest increase in Arthur's heart rate from anxiety would now trigger a deafening, continuous alarm, creating an atmosphere of urgent crisis. With the technical setup complete, I staged the scene. I rumpled the bedsheets, threw some gauze pads on the floor, and spilled a cup of water by the leg of the bed, as if knocked over in a frantic rush. The room now looked chaotic and tragic. The smell of antiseptic and rubbing alcohol, which I had deliberately sprinkled around, mingled with the frankincense, creating the unmistakable odor of a hospital room where death was imminent. I looked at Arthur one last time. His lips were already starting to look dry, and his breathing was more labored from the stress. A knot of pain tightened in my stomach. I told myself to be strong, to not give in to emotion. I sank to the floor, let my hair fall messily over my face, and smudged a bit of dark eyeshadow under my eyes to make myself look haggard and distraught. The monitor began to shriek. The numbers on the screen danced chaotically. Heart rate 110, blood pressure 80/50. They were fake readings, of course, manipulated by me. But to a layman like Michael, it was a death sentence for his father. I took one last deep breath and let out a blood-curdling scream that tore through the night silence. "Dad! Dad, wake up!" Then I grabbed my phone and dialed Michael's number. It rang 3 times before he answered. He had clearly been waiting for this call, anticipating the news of his father's death like a celebration. "Hello? Emily? What's wrong? Why are you calling so late?" His voice was groggy, a poor attempt at feigning sleep, but I could hear the alert, anxious excitement underneath. The faint sound of traffic in the background betrayed him. He wasn't in any quiet hotel room. I screamed into the phone, my voice breaking with sobs, punctuated by ragged gasps for air. "Michael, you have to come home. Now. It's Dad. He's crashing. The alarms are going off. He's turning blue. I'm so scared, Michael." There was a pregnant pause on the other end. Michael was either savoring the moment or calculating his next move. Then his voice became urgent, a masterful performance of panic. "What? How, doctor? Evan said he was stable this afternoon." "Calm down, Emily. What do the numbers say?" I held the phone close to the monitor so he could hear the piercing wail of the alarm. "Beep, beep, beep. His heart rate is over 100 and his blood pressure has dropped. I'm calling 911. We have to get him to the hospital or he's going to die." "No!" Michael's roar cut me off, raw and violent. I paused, feigning confusion. "What? Why not? He's dying, and you're saying no?" Realizing his mistake, Michael quickly modulated his tone, shifting to a soothing but commanding voice. "I mean, an ambulance will take too long at this hour, and the paperwork, bouncing around in the back of a truck, will only make him weaker. Listen to me, Emily. Do not call 911 or any other doctor. Do you understand?" Then what do we do? Just stand here and watch him die?" I wailed, playing the part of a helpless, hysterical wife. "I'm on my way. I'm already close to home. I brought a special herbal remedy with me from a traditional healer. It's very powerful. 1 injection and he'll stabilize. If you let those Western doctors touch him, they'll give him the wrong drugs and kill him with the shock. Wait for me. I'll be there in 15 minutes. "A traditional remedy?" I scoffed internally, though the tears still streamed down my face. I knew exactly what his remedy was. It was the final, merciful injection, a one-way ticket to the afterlife for my father-in-law, without leaving a trace. He was afraid of 911 because real paramedics would recognize the signs of poisoning, or worse, they might actually save Arthur, ruining his inheritance plan. "Okay, please hurry. I'm so scared," I whimpered, then hung up. The second my finger left the screen, my panicked expression vanished. I wiped my tears, my eyes becoming sharp and focused. 15 minutes. That's how long it would take him to get from his hiding spot to the house. and that was all the time I needed to set the stage for the final act. I turned to my father-in-law, who was watching me anxiously. I gave him a reassuring smile. He took the bait, Dad. Now, let's get ready to welcome our devoted son home. The countdown had begun. 15 minutes wasn't long, but for a professional like me, it was enough time to turn the tables. The first thing I did was remove the clamped IV line. I replaced it with a bag of Ringer's lactate solution, adding dextrose and vitamins, and opened the valve to full flow. The life-giving fluid rushed into Arthur's veins, replenishing his hydration and electrolytes, quickly reviving his flagging strength. "Just hold on, Dad. This might feel a little cold, but you'll feel better in a moment," I murmured. His complexion began to regain some color, his lips looking less chapped. Next, I pulled a large, dusty case from under the bed. It contained an advanced CPR training mannequin I had borrowed from a medical training center to tutor students. The mannequin was the size and weight of a real person and contained electronics that could be connected to a monitor to simulate various cardiac rhythms. I quickly powered it on and hooked it up to the monitor beside the bed. I removed the EKG leads from Arthur, attached them to the mannequin's chest, and then hid the mannequin under a thin blanket on the far side of the bed, away from the dim glow of the nightstand lamp. On the mannequin's control panel, I selected the ventricular fibrillation setting. Instantly, the monitor's screen once again displayed the chaotic, jagged waveform of a dying heart. The alarm shrieked, but this time it was reading the mannequin's heart, not Arthur's. My father-in-law lay quietly, receiving fluids and oxygen. His real vital signs were stabilizing, but Michael would never know. I covered Arthur with a blanket, leaving only his face and one hand exposed. I adjusted the lighting, turning off the main overhead light and leaving only the dim, yellow lamp in the corner, creating an atmosphere of murky, deceptive shadows. In that dim light, the line between man and machine, life and death, was blurred. I placed a cool, damp cloth on his forehead, pretending to reduce a fever but actually obscuring his recovering complexion. "When he comes in," I whispered urgently, "keep your eyes shut tight and relax your whole body. Don't move, no matter what happens. Only open your eyes when I give the signal. Do you understand?" Arthur blinked his confirmation, his old eyes glinting with steely resolve. He was no longer a victim awaiting his fate. He was my partner in this final battle. I sank to the floor, leaning against the bed, my arms wrapped around my knees, adopting the posture of a woman who had given up all hope. The screech of tires outside broke the silence, followed by the clang of the gate being forced open and the heavy thud of footsteps on the stairs. Michael burst into the room like a storm, bringing the night's chill and the stink of gasoline with him. His hair was a mess, his clothes disheveled, his forehead beaded with sweat, a perfect costume for the role of a frantic son rushing to his dying father's side. "Dad! Dad!" he cried out, a heart-wrenching sound, and threw himself on his knees beside the bed. He grabbed Arthur's hand, which I had pre-chilled with an ice pack, and buried his face in it, sobbing uncontrollably. "Dad, I'm too late. I'm a terrible son. Please don't leave me." I watched him from my corner, peering through the gaps between my fingers. His cries were so full of anguish that any outsider would have been moved to tears. But I, who had lived with him for 16 years, saw the nauseating theatricality of his performance. While he wailed, his eyes darted up to the monitor. When he saw the chaotic waveform indicating cardiac arrest, I saw his lips twitch, a cold glint of triumph flashing in his eyes before being extinguished. He wasn't grieving. He was confirming his success. He turned to me, his eyes filled with a mixture of disgust and pity, but his voice was full of hollow comfort. "Emily, get up. Don't cry. It was his time. We did everything we could. Let me take care of him now, for his final journey." He stood, wiped his fake tears, and his face became a mask of grim determination. He patted my shoulder. "Go downstairs and boil some water. Bring up some clean towels. I want to wash him, so he can pass on peacefully." He was trying to get rid of me, to have the room to himself to deliver the final blow. I nodded, stumbling to my feet, my movements unsteady. "Okay, I'll go. Please, save him. You have to save him." I know. "Now go," he snapped, his impatience showing. I shuffled toward the door, but my mind was a whirlwind of calculations. 1, 2, 3 steps. I stopped at the threshold, my hand gripping the wooden frame. Thinking I was gone, Michael turned his back to the door, blocking my view of the bed. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small metal case. He opened it and removed a syringe, already filled with a clear liquid. In the dim light, his shadow on the wall was twisted and monstrous, the human mask finally ripped away. He held the syringe up, flicking it to remove air bubbles. His movements were chillingly professional, not of a grieving son, but of an executioner. I stood frozen in the doorway, my knuckles white from gripping the frame. My breath caught in my chest. This was the moment I had both dreaded and prepared for. His cruelty was no longer a suspicion, no longer words on a recording. It was real, raw, and happening right in front of me. He leaned down and whispered in Arthur's ear, his voice stripped of all pretense, now just cold and ruthless. "Go peacefully, Dad. I know you've been suffering. I'll make sure you have a grand funeral, the biggest mausoleum in the cemetery. The company is in trouble, and this property will save me, save our family. If you love me, you'll do this one last thing for me." He spoke of his father's death as if discarding an old, useless piece of furniture. His father's life was just a number on a loan agreement. He had convinced himself this was a mercy killing, a way to soothe his own conscience. "This medicine is from a special healer," he continued, swabbing Arthur's wrist with an alcohol pad. "It's painless, just like falling asleep." I stared at the syringe. The liquid was crystal clear. Epinephrine, used for cardiac resuscitation, is light-sensitive and usually comes in an amber vial. The solution itself is often slightly yellowish or cloudy, never perfectly clear and thin like water. With my 15 years of experience, I knew exactly what it was: potassium chloride, KCl, in a high concentration. A small amount injected directly into a vein would disrupt the heart's electrical activity, causing instant cardiac arrest. A quick, clean, and brutal death. Michael held the needle, his hand steady. He took a deep breath, preparing to plunge it into the blue vein on his father's wrinkled skin. In that moment, time stood still. I saw the sick excitement in his eyes. The release he craved was not for his father, but for himself. I could wait no longer. If that needle went in, all my efforts, all of Arthur's suffering, would be for nothing. I shed my fear, shed my role as the weak wife. I launched myself from the doorway, silent as a predator. With my left hand, I grabbed his wrist, my thumb digging hard into the pressure point between the two major tendons. It's a critical weak spot that causes immediate, paralyzing pain. "Ah!" Michael shrieked. The unexpected agony made his hand reflexively open. The syringe fell, the needle snapping as it hit the floor, the clear liquid splashing. He spun around, his eyes wide with disbelief. He couldn't comprehend how his meek, subservient wife could execute such a swift, precise attack. He tried to overpower me, but I was faster. I didn't let go. Using his momentum, I slipped my right arm under his, twisting it up behind his back in a joint lock I'd learned in a training course for restraining agitated patients. A sickening crack echoed as his shoulder joint was forced into an unnatural position. He cried out in pain and was forced to his knees. "What are you doing? Are you crazy?" he roared, still thinking I was having some kind of hysterical fit. I tightened my grip, forcing him to the floor, and hissed in his ear, my voice dripping with ice. "Epinephrine is usually yellowish and comes in an amber vial. That clear liquid, that's potassium chloride, isn't it, Michael? You were going to murder your own father right in front of me?" My words hit him like a physical blow. He froze, his most secret, most sophisticated murder plan exposed by a single sentence. You're talking nonsense! Let me go!" he sputtered, trying to struggle, but the pain was too intense. I stared into his eyes, my own devoid of fear, filled only with contempt. "Did you really think I was that stupid, Michael? Did you think I didn't know about the diffuser? That I didn't know you were in the Hamptons with Jessica? For 16 years, I let you have your stage, but that doesn't mean I was blind." Michael's jaw dropped, cold sweat beading on his forehead. He realized the woman restraining him was not the meek Emily he knew. He had fatally underestimated me. You "You vicious bitch! You knew all along?" he hissed, his refined mask completely gone, revealing the cornered thug beneath. I kicked the back of his knee, sending him sprawling, then quickly stepped back to stand protectively in front of the bed. Michael scrambled to his feet, clutching his injured shoulder, his eyes burning with hatred. He was about to lunge at me, but just then, I yanked the blanket off the other side of the bed, revealing the CPR mannequin with its wires connected to the still beeping monitor. Michael stopped, his face a mask of confusion. "What? What is that?" I calmly switched off the monitor's alarm, disconnected the leads from the mannequin, and reattached them to Arthur's chest. The screen flickered, then came back to life. The EKG was no longer the chaotic scribble of death, but a strong, steady rhythm. 85 beats per minute. Blood pressure 120/80. The soft, rhythmic beep replaced the frantic alarm. The room fell into a terrifying silence. How is that possible? "Dad?" Michael staggered backward, bumping into the medicine cart and sending bottles crashing to the floor. His face was as white as a sheet. In his mind, his father should have been at death's door. Why were his vital signs normal? "He's fine, Michael," I said coldly. "He's much stronger than you think." And then, the most terrifying thing possible for Michael happened. Arthur, the man he believed was deep in a coma, opened his eyes. They were no longer dull and clouded, but sharp and blazing with an anger that had festered for 8 years. He slowly raised a hand, his arm thin but wiry, trembling with effort, and pushed the cloth from his forehead. He propped himself up on his elbows, struggling to sit up. I rushed to his side, supporting his back and arranging pillows behind him. Michael was frozen to the spot, his knees beginning to tremble. He stared at his father as if he were seeing a ghost. "Dad, you're awake?" Arthur didn't answer immediately. He sat there, as imposing as a mountain. Though his body was wasted by illness, the spirit of the old soldier was intact. He took a deep, shuddering breath and fixed his gaze on his only son. His eyes held no love, only profound disappointment and soul-crushing pain. Michael shrank back, his eyes darting around for an escape, but I was blocking the door. He was a rat trapped in a corner. Arthur stared at Michael, his dry lips moving. It took him a long moment to control the muscles in his jaw, but when he spoke, his voice was a low, hoarse rasp that echoed in the silent room. "I have no son." The short, broken sentence carried the weight of 1,000 judgments. It wasn't a curse, shouted in anger. It was a declaration of disownment, the most brutal moral sentence a father could pronounce upon his child. Michael collapsed to the floor. "Dad, please, let me explain. I was just trying to end your suffering. I'm in so much debt. I had no choice." "Silence!" Arthur roared with all his might, the effort turning his face crimson. "You tried to kill me 8 years ago. Wasn't that enough? Now you try again?" Michael looked stunned. He thought his father didn't know, that the crime of the past was forgotten. But Arthur knew everything. He had been lucid inside that paralyzed body, a prisoner witnessing every lie, every betrayal, for nearly 3,000 days. "You cheated on your wife. You lied to your daughter. You mortgaged the family estate," Arthur gasped, each word draining his strength. "I've already written a new will. You won't get a single dime." The word will was like a bolt of lightning. Michael's primary motive, the money, the property was gone. He wasn't just broke. He was a broke, failed murderer. "No, that's impossible. You're paralyzed. You can't make a will. It was her," he shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. You manipulated him." I looked at him with pity. "Did you forget that I had his legal competency evaluated 6 months ago? Frank and a lawyer were here while you were enjoying yourself with your mistress in a hotel. Everything is notarized and witnessed. You've lost, Michael." Michael buried his face in his hands and began to sob like a child, a pathetic, gutless sound. He wasn't crying out of remorse. He was crying for the lost money, for the loan sharks who would soon come for him. Just then, the distant wail of police sirens pierced the night, growing louder and louder. I held up my phone. The screen showed an active call to 911. "Do you hear that, Michael?" I asked softly. "That's your ride. You'll have plenty of time to repent where you're going." The wail of the police siren stopped directly in front of the house. Flashing red and blue lights pulsed through the window, dancing across the walls and illuminating Michael's bloodless face. He stood frozen, the broken syringe at his feet, his eyes wide with terror. The door burst open and a team of police officers entered, led by a stern-faced detective. "Michael Peterson," the detective's voice boomed, "you're under arrest for attempted murder and fraud." Michael began to babble, waving his hands frantically. "You've got the wrong man. I was giving my father a heart stimulant. My wife, she's insane. She's framing me." He pointed at me, his eyes wild, making one last, desperate attempt to shift the blame. But the most important living witness was sitting up in bed. Arthur raised a frail, trembling arm and pointed directly at his son. His voice was hoarse, but it carried the full weight of a betrayed father's testimony. "He's the one. He's been poisoning me for 8 years. Tonight, he came to finish the job." Arthur's words were the final nail in Michael's coffin. He crumpled, his knees hitting the floor with a dull thud. The cold steel of handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists, where a luxury watch had been just minutes before. I quietly walked over and handed the detective the USB drive, the vial of digitalis, and the broken syringe with its traces of potassium chloride. I looked at Michael one last time, feeling not hatred, but pity for a life destroyed by greed. "You lost, Michael," I said softly. "Not to me. You lost to yourself." As Michael was led away, head bowed in defeat, the house suddenly felt vast and empty. I went back to my father-in-law and held him, and for the first time in a long time, we both wept. The next morning, at the police station, I sat across from the lead detective and calmly laid out every detail. On the table between us was a thick binder I had prepared, organized with a logic that impressed the seasoned officers. I presented the irrefutable evidence I had so carefully collected, the Ziploc bag with Arthur's hair. "This is his biological diary, detective. Analysis will show the concentration of toxins over the last 8 years. Then came the frozen urine samples, and finally, the old Nokia phone with the unsent draft from that fateful day." The detective looked through the file, his expression shifting from skepticism to respect. "Ma'am, you've prepared a more thorough case file than we could have. It's rare to see a victim's family member with such composure and expertise." I gave a sad smile. When you're pushed into a corner, you find a strength you never knew you had. I wasn't just protecting my father-in-law. I was protecting my own sanity and my name. News came in from other task forces. Dr. Evans was apprehended at his private clinic trying to destroy records of illegal drug purchases. Jessica Adams was arrested at the airport, attempting to flee the country with embezzled company funds. The entire criminal network Michael had built was dismantled. I walked out of the police station and into the bright morning air. The legal battle had begun, and I knew I would win. But it was a bitter victory, paid for with the ruin of a family. 3 months later, I wheeled Arthur into the courtroom for the trial. He had recovered some movement, and his mind was sharp. He insisted on being there to see his son one last time. Michael stood in the defendant's box, gaunt and pale in his prison jumpsuit. He couldn't bring himself to look at his father or at me. Next to him, Jessica and Dr. Evans trembled. But the greatest tragedy was not theirs. Our daughter Chloe sat in the gallery, her eyes swollen from crying. The truth had shattered her. To break Michael's psychological hold, I had shown her a clip from his office security camera. In it, Michael and Jessica were laughing. "Does she suspect anything?" Jessica asked. Michael took a drag from his cigarette. "Chloe? She's naive, believes anything I say. I told her mother's crazy, and she bought it completely. She's my trump card to keep Emily in line." Watching that video, Chloe's world collapsed. When the judge sentenced Michael to life in prison for attempted murder and aggravated fraud, Chloe's heart-wrenching sobs filled the courtroom. Arthur sat stoically in his wheelchair, his hands gripping the armrests. An old man's tears fall inward. He watched his only son be led away, his expression one of infinite sorrow. To raise a child only to watch him throw his life away for greed is a father's greatest tragedy. After the trial, I held my daughter. "It's okay to cry," I whispered. "Cry it all out today. Tomorrow, we start over." I sold the house, a place tainted with too many dark memories. With the proceeds, after paying off all legitimate debts, I bought a bright, modern condominium with a large balcony where Arthur could garden. I went back to work, eventually becoming the head of the rehabilitation department at my hospital, and I enrolled in law school, attending classes at night. I wanted to combine my medical knowledge with a legal education to help others in vulnerable situations, the elderly abused by their children, the spouses trapped in psychological torment. It was my path to healing. Chloe, sobered by the trauma, transformed. The spoiled princess was gone, replaced by a quiet, thoughtful young woman who now helped care for her grandfather. Seeing her in the kitchen, I felt a mix of pride and sorrow. A young tree, battered by a storm, grows deeper roots. One evening, an email arrived from the correctional facility. The sender was Michael Peterson. I stared at his name for a long time, feeling nothing. I wasn't curious about what he had to say, whether it was an apology or a curse. That chapter was closed. I didn't want his words to poison the peace we had found. I dragged the email to the trash and deleted it permanently. I stepped out onto the balcony. Arthur and Chloe were watering the orchids together, their laughter echoing in the soft evening air. The setting sun cast a golden glow on my father's silver hair and my daughter's dark curls. It was a simple, beautiful scene. I smiled, breathing in the fragrant night air. Life, I realized, was still beautiful. True happiness wasn't in grand houses or calculated schemes, but in the quiet peace of the soul and the sincere love of those who remained.